Well, hey, it is a good day, and one of the reasons is because we're going to get to go to another book. We have looked at the book of Second John, the book of Third John, and hopefully you've worked a familiarity with those books, and that's the objective. I've said from the beginning that what you want to do is remember that the Bible is a library of 66 books. Well, there's no rule that says you can't pick out the shortest, easiest to read ones and go ahead and look, because it's a full book of the Bible, even though they're one page, but they have plenty of content there that gives you plenty to think about, plenty to process, plenty to engage with. And we've said from the beginning that the goal is really to start small but go for daily. Start small, go for daily. Just try to make this a part of my life practice. So if you start small, it's a little easier to get into. But now, think about this. We've covered 2 books already. We're going on to our 3rd, and before January's out, we're going to go to a 4th. So you'll have 4 books that you have hopefully a fairly working understanding of by the time this is all done. And then I'm just going to give you a list of short books, and as they get longer and longer and longer, that once you're on your own, and I think you'll be able to go after that. We're going to be in the book of Philemon for the next few days, and Philemon is the shortest book of the books that Paul, or letters that the Apostle Paul wrote, starting with Romans, and they kind of go in order of length. Well, they don't kind of go that way. They do go that way, in order of how long they are. So we're going to the very end of the books written by Paul. It's called Philemon. It's right after the books of 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, and we're going to look at that. And what we're going to do is just follow the same things that we've said before, because once you're on your own, just kind of want to get oriented. Anytime I go to a new book, I want to make it my first goal of Bible engagement is to listen. And what listen means is just to let the Bible speak for itself. And so I have responsibility to, figure out who's writing, and that's the Apostle Paul. Who's he writing to, and why is he writing to them? And what's he trying to get across to the original reader? When the guy got the letter, what did he hear? And so I'm listening in on their conversation. That's how God has expressed his word. So first I'm going to listen into their conversation. I'm not there to first kind of dig at it and find something for myself. Just take it in. Now, since it's a very short book, I'd highly recommend, like we've been doing with the others, that you read it from beginning to end. It takes hardly any time at all. Just read it from beginning to end, maybe a couple times. Get the feel for the flow of thought. Understand the situation. Now, here's something I noticed. I can't remember if I said this or not before, but I've recommended the YouVersion app of the Bible. That's the Bible that I use, actually. It's on my phone, and downloaded the YouVersion, Y-O-U, and it offers like zillions of different translations. But what I've noticed about the NIV, the New International Version of the Bible, which is one I typically use more than the others, is each of the books in the NIV have an intro piece. So if you go to Philemon and page back 1 page, and it'll have a brief intro. And so you always want to do that. Know the intro, because that's all they're doing for you. There's somebody out there that said, okay, here's what the book's about. You can also look at blueletterbible.org just to get that information. What's the historical circumstance? Why is this letter being written? What's the situation? That kind of stuff. So you can listen to the conversation. Now, I'll make it easy for you. The situation is the man being addressed is a guy by the name of Philemon. He's a friend of Paul's, apparently. He opens up, and Paul calls him a friend, says, hey, friend, I got something to talk to you about. And friend of Paul's that apparently had a church that met at his house. He was most likely a wealthier person, had a large enough house for people from the Christian faith to meet at his house, to have church. There are other names listed that are greeting, and what commentators say about that is that's most likely his wife and possibly his son. So it's like Paul is writing this family. And they think that because of the name list, but they also think about because of the subject. The subject is there was a runaway slave named Onesimus, and he has run away to Rome, and Paul met him in Rome, and he comes to Paul, and he comes to Christ. And Paul is talking to Philemon about this Onesimus slave, because Paul, by the way, is in Rome in his house arrest, and you can read about that. The very last of the book of Acts, it leaves Paul in Rome under house arrest. And so that's what they call the prison letters. It's more like the house arrest letters. He's in a house, and he's writing letters to people. And it's written to the town of Colossae, The book of Colossians is named for that church as well. So that's the whole setting. Now, I would also highly encourage you, you don't have to do this, but it helps me to listen. A lot of paper Bibles have maps in the back. Go and find Colossae on a map. And the reason is that there's something about it that just kind of makes it a little bit more real. And that's one of the things you want to do. You want to personalize these things. Remember, these were real people at a real time. Just because they lived 2,000 years ago didn't mean they weren't human. They were normal people. They had a house, wife, kids, that kind of thing. And they had situations they were dealing with. So then do those things, read the review, and then because it is a one chapter book, just like the other ones, read the whole thing. Get a feel for the flow of thought. Just listen to it. If it's confusing, and then what we're going to do, we're going to be honest. We're going to pray about it. Lord, I noticed this. I noticed that. I noticed the other thing. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. Be honest and just go through the book. Now, there's a couple things about Philemon that you ought to know. Number one, it's considered positively historic because of the subject matter it's dealing with, and that's slavery. We'll talk about that before we're out. And because the Roman world was I think over 50% slave labor. And so there's that subject. And this book is considered historic. Even though it's very small, it's considered to have had a world impact that we'll talk about. So that's important to know. And then finally, I have to say, I'm inspired I'm going to do I called it a bonus track. I said I'd do a bonus track about which translation to use and which translation to read. And this inspired me to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it because reading through in the Bible I've been using, the New American Standard, it was clunky as it could be. And so it was a little harder to read than normal. And I went to the International Version to kind of look for a more readable version. But anyway, that's the assignment. Just get to know it, listen to it, and then we'll pick up and we'll try to examine some things tomorrow.